The Man in Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mai, good afternoon. Welcome to Man in Line on Manx Radio. Well, of course, today marks 50 years since the devastating fire at the Summerland Leisure Centre on Douglas Promenade. 50 people died, another 80 were injured, and many people were scarred mentally for many years. Tonight at 7 o'clock, there's a 1-minute silence at the Summerland site to mark the 50th anniversary. No pomp, no circumstance, just a simple, non-religious gathering to remember the victims, the injured, emergency service, and all those who came to help. That's tonight, 7 o'clock, that 1-minute silence. And also tonight, later on, there's a beacon of light shining into the sky. The installation's going to be switched on at 10 tonight and will run through until midnight. And thanks to the people at ELS, the Sound and Light Company, and Ace Hire and Sales, Ted Crow and the gang, who are supplying the generator. So it's tonight, 7 o'clock, a 1-minute silence at the Summerland site, and the beacon of light tonight at 10 through to midnight there as well. I don't know whether you what your views are regarding Summerland. It's something that for many, many years the Isle of Man never really came to terms with. It was such a shocking, dreadful, horrendous, horrible thing that happened, and for many years, of course, was erased really from public consciousness. Nobody ever talked about Summerland, but 50 years it is today. So if you're heading to either of those events tonight, or maybe also because there's stuff going on at Loch Promenade Church as well throughout the Loch Promenade Church lunchtime music sessions. I think Alex Crowley, Ruby Briscoe Taylor, Matt Creer's there as well for lunchtime music sessions. Gary Bennett's artwork and Sarah Callow's photographic display. It's at Loch Prom Church today, and it's also there tomorrow. First of all, on Man in Line today, David's with us now. Hi, David.
Hi, Randy. Listen, confession first is yesterday I couldn't listen to you. I had to go somewhere special, and he didn't have a radio on, so that's out of the thing. The second thing is, when Mr. Stoll came on again and I thought I was going to get some real good praise for trying to do something, and it wasn't. He said, I think in the interview, I've listened to it again today, I said I failed. Now, this was to do, and I'll not name the lady, I'll just name the location. She's got a big house in I would call it a posh area anyway. They're all posh in Onken. So she has about, 7 vehicles parked on the road, and Brian's quite right. I didn't look at the tax discs. He also has about 7 or 8 vehicles on his curtilage in his front garden and so forth. This guy is a professional man. So what do? You look at, I've spoken to the lady several times. I've seen her come up to a property and taken photographs. When I get to find the photographs on the computer, I'll send you one just to give you an example. What it is, you have to get the professionals involved, and that is they're on the highway, so that's the police, which is the Eastern Neighbourhood Team. They were contacted 3 times. They went to see her once, I believe. We never got anywhere. So what does neighbourhood policing do for Onken? In my opinion, not a lot at the minute. Maybe because we're connected with Douglas all the time and they get the lion's share of it. So then you ring the DOI. Nice guys, ladies down there, no problem at all. Asked them to visit the site to check to see if there were valid discs on the vehicles, and also too when the certain individual had a Land Rover with a trailer on and another vehicle on top of it, and parked the other side of the lady's driveway. Now, can you imagine? They put these what they call white T-bars up for people to make sure that if people are tight, and usually in terraced areas, they can get out of their properties if they've got a driveway coming in. Mm-hmm. right? So I just wanted, and the other thing too, just to let Brian know, the planning department enforcement is drying up on me. Since I mentioned I was going to get a response from the planning enforcement that it wasn't, under this Data Protection Act, it wasn't David Quirk. I haven't got it, but maybe when Mr. Thomas is on tomorrow, I'll ask what the policy was when he was there as minister. And can I just say for next week, I'd love to pick up the subject of data protection and access to information, a bit like Paul Moulton's having a problem at the minute. I have in my possession about 28, 30 pages. I've done data subject access requests on individuals in government and some other private individuals too. And I just can't believe how much black marker pen. I've got a page, they printed a page, right? It just says briefing note at the top, and the whole page is black.
It's completely redacted.
Completely. I can't believe it. I've showed it to somebody who's a bit more professional than me, and he said that's an absolute joke. Why would you send it if you're going to run all that out? Why would you do it? And this is the DOI, and I'm hoping to have a meeting with the new acting minister, Mr. Cannon, because some of these issues need to be addressed. Because when public are asking, never mind me, other people are asking for information from a government department, it should be freely given if it doesn't malign anybody. But I wish sometimes when people actually complain to the DOI or complain about me or longer commissioners, they actually put it in writing and put their name on it.
Okay. Before you go, David, I just want to come back to this thing about parking, right. and you're not speaking as a commissioner, but I mean,
no.
As a commissioner, you will have had this. There's that saying when good neighbours become good friends, but bad neighbours can become enemies. And I just wonder how, with this impending legislation regarding large vehicles in residential areas, how we tread around that.
Well, government's got to have a bit of initiative themselves. They own, I think in Onken, they probably do they own any car parks? I might be wrong, but they own some Conrenny, and it's in a rural area out near the riding stables and stuff like that. There's a massive big car park there, which is remote. There's also maybe other places. There is a bit of land near Brian's. Brian, Mr. Stoll could probably help me out then. Who owns that land? Because it's on the corner going down towards his place. And it used to have a road going through it. So the road was obviously owned by the DOI. But can I find at the minute who owns the corner piece of land, which was a bit of a field? It wasn't very big. But maybe there's something we can do. And it has to be what I would call a tripartite thing, is the people out there, the local authority and government. And I'd like to know, maybe preempting Mr. Thomas, or you can ask him the question because I'll lose it a little bit, is how did this come about when politicians are saying they don't know anything about it? Now, in my term, 2 terms as being a national politician, and sometimes at local government level as well, is if you're getting into the mire or something's contentious, you usually tell the people or have a conversation with the politicians and say, look, we're thinking of proposing this. And we're not the only area that's having difficulties. Loads of areas. I've had people on from Douglas saying they won't do something about vehicles parked over. I've visited at least a dozen sites, most of them in Onken. There's been a couple in Douglas who people I knew, and I just said, look, I can just come down and I'll give you my opinion, but you need to write to your councillor, and you also need to write to your MHK. Now, one lady said to me, this is the gospel. I wrote the letters but never received a comment. That's down to them. And the other thing is, why I'm not in the phone book before Brian comes on is because I'm a sure customer. And sure customers are not printed in the telecom phone book.
Right.
Honestly, I didn't know until I changed over and the book came out, and my wife said to me, you're not in the book. So I complained. And quite rightly they're saying, but Mr. Quirk, You're not Manx Telecom customer. You're one of Shure. But where does Shure get their lines from?
Manx Telecom.
Because they're a monopoly.
All right, thanks, David.
See you then.
Good to hear from you. And Mark's with us now. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Andy. How you doing, fella?
How's things?
They're all right. How are you?
Oh, good. Well, it's better inside than out today, put it that way.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. Right, just a brief one. I won't be on as long as David Quirk. Summerland. I have to say the very first time when the Chief Minister said he was sorry, it was rather very automated. He didn't sound at all, sincere or anything. Since then, he's become a little bit more human, shall we say, towards the apology side of it. I was away on a school trip with Williston Primary School at the time, and we came back and we saw it burning away in Douglas. So, you can imagine that stayed with me for quite a long time. But what I'm trying to get at is this misadventure thing. I was just saying to my wife then in the kitchen, misadventure is you're slightly culpable for your own death. That's like saying you're walking into Boots and, the roof collapses in Boots and you die. Well, it's a case of, you should have accepted that the roof could have collapsed. People didn't go to Summerland thinking, this could go up in a ball of flame. They went there thinking it was a lovely, safe environment to let their kids go and to have a great day. Now, if they change the misadventure to unlawful killing, which is what they should do, isn't that going to open up a whole minefield of legal action against the Isle of Man government?
Possibly, but remember, no win, no fee isn't legal on the Isle of Man. So anybody, if that happened, I'm not saying it would, should or could, but I mean, that people would have to fund the cases themselves.
I'm fairly certain, though, that there's several lawyers out there now chomping at the bit to launch a class action against the Isle of Man government for negligence, because there has to have been some sort of... I'm not going to use the wrong words here, obviously we don't want people to get sued, but there has to have been some form of culpability in that building for it to have been passed. Now, when you had the builders who were building it throwing this Oraglass into the braziers in the winter to stay warm, didn't that raise an alarm? Didn't somebody say, why are we building the entire structure out of this when it's so obviously fire? It's not fire resistant. So somebody somewhere, whether it's the planning authority, whether it's the government, whether it's the planners, the architects, the owners, somebody somewhere is culpable for signing off that building as okay. I mean, where was the chief fire officer? Don't they go around and check all these buildings are safe? Where was the chief fire officer at the time?
Yeah, the only issue, of course, now it's nigh on 55 years since it was planned and built and what have you. Most of the people who were senior at that time are no longer with us. It was commissioned, I think, by Douglas Corporation then. They wanted it because they knocked down Derby Castle for the site, and Trust House 40 took over the running of it.
But the thing is, Andy, is to say, it's 50 years now. Can we not just, put a full stop to it? I agree with that. It's 50 years ago. A lot of people are not around anymore. But it's something that's it's a stain on the Manx society. It's a stain on us as a Manx nation, because people around the world are going to look at it. Because if you think about it, you watch Granada Reports, you watch the BBC, they always call it the forgotten tragedy. Now, we've not forgotten it, so who are they alluding to when they keep saying it? They're alluding to the various administrations at the time. I've not forgotten about it, and I was only, 9 years of age at the time, and I think about it virtually every week, about the Summerland tragedy, and whenever I go past it, I get quite upset because I remember seeing this building that I spent a lot of happy days in going up in flames. So I've not forgotten it, so who Who's forgotten about it? And I'll tell you who it is. It's the various administrations. They want to put a full stop to it in case they get a class action brought against them.
OK. All right, Mark. Thanks for calling today.
No problem, fella.
Good to hear from you. Thanks for that. And also, you may want to take a listen tonight, 6 o'clock. Part 1 was last night. Part 2 is tonight. Part 3 tomorrow. John Moss's excellent programmes. Summerland 50 years on, looking at what Summerland was. A very bold initiative at the time in the 1960s. Obviously, in retrospect, flawed, fatally flawed. But, well, all the information's out there, and there'll be lots more on Summerland in the next couple of days. Howard's with us now. Hi, Howard.
Hello, Andy. Mark, I agree with quite a lot that he said there, but unfortunately, as I say, if you delve too deep into this, and they say there's a couple of 3 lawyers out there chomping at the bit, waiting to get a few bob out of it. But there are a lot of people in the background, companies, trust house authorities, the council, the government, everybody. So who, at the end of the day, if you open this, it's opening one massive can of worms. And look what's happened to Grenfell, the flats down there. They're still covered in a plastic wrap with no further forward movement on any liability or compensation or apologies, etc.
Do you think it's right of the Chief Minister to apologise, Howard?
It seems to be the way of the world today. They're looking for apologies for everything. It's a snowflake population, the snowflake generation. And there's people out there, they say we want an apology for this, an apology for that. I'm 80 years old, nearly 80 years old, and people accepted these things. And I can remember where I was at the time when Summerland went up. I was up in Ramsey, and it came on the news, on the television, in a place I was in. And the first thoughts there was it was a bomb, because at the time it went up, it was in the Troubles in Ireland, and it's possible that was what it could have been. It went up that quick, and that's one of the stories at the time. So, but that's not saying what it was. They were going back to the 2 or 3 boys out the back with the fire. But it's a terrible tragedy. But there are dozens and dozens of tragedies all over the place. And is everybody going to apologise and give a heart-rending apology? Which the generation for that's going to have to do that apology is now and was not part of the generation. They're demanding apologies for everybody, and the things that happened in the past, you can't keep apologising for them. You have to move on and remember it for what it was. Oh,
I see. That whole thing about not visiting the sins of the father on the son.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is getting like, North Korea, isn't it? Where if you commit a crime or something that's against the government, not only do you go to jail, but 3 generations of your family go to jail. You know. But anyway, that's not what I come on for. What David was talking about, the cars, etc., parked. And this is some advice I was given a while ago. And I was parked down the back of the Gaiety. And I was told to the traffic warden, it was all perfectly legit to a point. And he said, you parked on a drop curb. And I wasn't on the pavement, I was on the road. He said, but there's a drop curb there. He said, and you are not allowed to park on it or by it. And a lot of new houses and some older ones have drop curbs leading to a vehicle access onto the front of the house.
Right.
So if somebody parks in front of your house by the drop curb, and this is what David referred to, the T-bar, the white painted line, you shouldn't have to do that because the law covers it. And if you park in front of somebody's house by the drop curb, denies them access or egress from the property, then you can go out and ask them to move their vehicle politely, of course. And if they don't, you just ask them again. And if they don't, you then can call the police. And they are obliged, in law, to come and ask that person to move the vehicle or have it moved. And I thought that's curious, and I came home and I looked it up. And true enough, you are not allowed in law to park where a drop curb is fitted. So if the people that's in the houses are having the problem with vehicles parking there, and they are parking that they cannot get access to their property, the law is on your side.
Where do you think this is going to end, Howard? Because I'll be honest with you, this has absolutely irritated the motorhome fraternity. I've had dozens of correspondences from the motorhome fraternity who are taking this very personally. Yeah,
well, I have seen a tremendous increase in motorhomes on the island because people are travelling a lot more. But I've also seen a lot of minibuses, and particularly the silver ones, parked around the place. The bus vannon, where they've got these minibuses, and they're parked all over the place, and they are, well, to put it politely, a nuisance. But people are going to buy motorhomes, and where our daughter lives she's in Stoke-on-Trent, they are not allowed to put, as a covenant on the house, they're not allowed to park a caravan or a motorhome on their driveway. And around the area, there's a covenant when they bought the house. But we're going to find there's a lot more. But if the government are going to go through this system of saying you can't park here, there, and everywhere, they're going to have to be very clearly defined on it. Because I have a van, and you've seen the van because that's where I carry my models in. Yeah. And that's all it's used for. But I can put that on the steam packet, providing I'm not taking freight, at the normal cost of a car. It's a transit van. Now, that's parked up by my house. And are they going to define, because it's a commercial vehicle designed, am I going to have to go and find somewhere to park that and pay a rental fee, whereas I'm already paying a road tax on it?
Okay, all right, Howard, thanks for calling.
But just bear in mind to say that drop curb, if anybody wants to look it up, it is the law.
Thanks, Howard.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers now, 29 minutes past 12. Do you know the score about cherry pickers being parked on council estates, on social housing estates? There's a painting firm parked outside a children's playground. They don't even live on the street. 5 days ago, says Texter 786. Does a cherry picker, I wonder, fit into large vehicles? Also, this is a question regarding the net zero future. Are motorhomes made with electric motors? Or will a motorhome, is that too big for an electric motor?
Got a nice motor to sell? Come and see us.
We are number one. We are family run. Mike's Motors. Mike's Motors.
At Mike's Motors, we don't just sell nice motors, we buy them too. So if you have a nice camper van, motorhome, car, van or commercial vehicle, we'd love to take a look at it. And if we like it, we'll make you a nice offer. Get in touch, visit mikesmotors.im or call 823 200.
Mike's Motors.
That's 823 200.
Whether you like your martini shaken or stirred, you'll find everything is just perfect at Bond's Restaurant in Onchan, where your host and new owner Saeed, formerly of the Italian shop, will ensure that you enjoy a fabulous experience from the moment you arrive. Whether dining for two or holding a celebration, Bond's will exceed your expectations with superb food without the fine dining price tag. For menus, upcoming theme nights and online bookings, visit bonds.im.
Every drop is precious. Water. So easy to take it for granted, isn't it? Our reservoirs supply the needs of our island, but with the effects of climate change, that's becoming more challenging every year. Manx water is the only water we have, so we need to make every drop count by using it wisely, at home, in the garden and in general. Visit manxutilities.im to find out how you can begin smarter living to lower energy bills and reduce your impact on our island environment.
When I saw the fire actually start, there was a small puff of grey smoke that came from a hut alongside of it.
The fire seemed innocuous at first, but out of sight, it was gathering a terrible strength. 50 years to the day after the Summerland fire, we tell how a young reporter reached the blaze before even the emergency services had arrived, of those who fought the fire and who witnessed the aftermath, and what happened to the 3 young Liverpool boys. This evening at 6 p.m. on Manx Radio and available as a podcast afterwards at manxradio.com.
The Man in Line with Andy Wint.
29 minutes before 1, and Tony's here. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Andy. I just wanted to make a point on the fire, okay? It was 50 years ago, and the main problem that caused a lot of the deaths was that the roof was made of something called plexiglass, which is plastic. And it was used because it was a lot lighter, so you could span a massive length without huge beams. And it was about money. It was about how costly it was to build. So effectively, you've built something out of a material that's flammable, a bit like probably Grenfell Tower in London. And it's not unusual this happens, but I don't think you can go back now and start pointing fingers. What we should have done at the time was said, we need to investigate how this happened and put in law so it doesn't happen again. And you can still do that. The problem is that a lot of people in the planning department, in DOI, etc., look at something and it's new and they don't really know about it, so they either ask somebody else or say, oh, it must be all right because it's used somewhere else. Grenfell's a typical example. If you look at the detail they've come from the people that supplied it, they lied about the fire retardant capabilities. So I don't think you're going to get anything by going down the road of saying, yes, this was a disaster that happened because somebody made a mistake. I think what we need to do is get rid of the legal challenge issue that we're going to take the government to court and damages and all the rest of it. Do an investigation, and I don't mean a 10-year, £200 million investigation. It should be just a review of all the detail. How did it happen? Why did it happen? Who made mistakes? Without naming them, because it doesn't help to name people now. And say this was done accidentally. So the death was misadventure. But the complicity of the people involved needs to be found out. And we don't need to necessarily name everybody, but I think the government is in a position to say this was a disaster waiting to happen because we were not aware of the problems that were in this building. And that's not that difficult to do.
Okay, all right. I appreciate your opinion, Tony.
One last thing.
Yeah.
I think Alf Cannon and the whole of the government needs to start being more open about net zero. Yesterday, I think it was, Bonzo came on and said you're going to have to increase the taxes. And that's true. You will. Because we're going to have to pay for this net zero desire, this dream we have, that we can suddenly plug in everything into electric and it's going to work. There is no plan, and effectively, somebody, the Manx taxpayer, is going to have to pay for it. Now, getting 5,000 people over here is not going to be enough. I think 18 months ago, David Ashford was very clear. He was in Treasury, I think, at the time, and he came on your programme and said, this is going to have to be paid for somehow. And that's the last I heard of it. Nobody else mentions it. The government needs to start telling the truth. I don't have a problem with going down the road of net zero. I just don't see how we're going to get there in a way that doesn't make everybody on the Isle of Man a pauper for the next 50 years. And also, I think there's a question of how you're going to get there, because there's no baseload design at all, anywhere in the system, in what they're proposing. No baseloads. Wind farm is not a baseload.
Well, we watch and we wait, Tony, and remember, in the end, you and me and everyone else, we all get the bill.
Agreed, but the thing is, I'd like to know why we're getting a bill when there's no long-term plan that is possibly going to happen, that's sensible. This is just pie in the sky.
All right, thanks, Tony.
All the best. Take care, Andy.
Gotta go now. Let's go to, I think it's Tula. Hi, Tula.
Oh, hang on a minute. I'm on speakerphone. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Tula.
Oh, good. Yes. I'm talking to a person who moved here in January 2020 to convert a barn, and which I'm still converting. I had no water and electricity for 6 months because it was COVID, and I couldn't go back across, so I stayed here and I lived with it, and I managed with solar panels and wind turbines, etc., etc. But what I'd like to know is why aren't we using water turbines? We have loads of water coming off the hills. We have loads of hills, we have loads of water.
Yeah.
So why aren't we looking at that idea?
What, hydroelectric stuff?
Yeah, but basically water turbines. Dick Strawbridge did it over 30 years ago. You can use a water turbine. There's one actually. There's only one on the island as far as I'm aware, and it's actually at the Water Services Board at the bottom of Faulty Will. That's
right.
The only one on the island.
And what size turbines would these be that you think we should have?
Well, it doesn't matter. You'd look at the flow of the river or the water that's coming down. I've got a river coming down my lane, and I've got a river coming to the left of my lane. So I've got rivers coming down, and as I say, I managed for 6 months without any mains supply because they wouldn't connect me because it was lockdown, COVID, etc. So why can't we look at that idea? It's not intrusive. They can be in the rivers, they can be in the glens. You know, we've got loads of glens, we've got loads of rivers. We've got water coming off the hills. And it wouldn't be obtrusive like a wind turbine, would it?
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens, Tula. You think we should have them, though?
Yeah, definitely, because it creates electricity. And if we're saying we need to be carbon neutral, why not go for that idea?
All right, thanks, Tula.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you. There is a turbine, there is a water turbine that I think functions at the moment, was rebuilt. It's in Groudle Glen. They just disconnected the turbine from it. It could generate stuff, and it whizzes round and round. It's very handsome, but it's not been connected. What happened to the boys who started the Summerland fire? They'll be in their 60s now. Well, they didn't... They started a fire in the little kiosk, didn't they? There were 3 boys from Liverpool who started. I think they got minor fines at the time. Nobody's ever heard anything more from them. I agree with Howard, says Texter 333. It was 50 years ago. We'll never forget what happened, but we need to put it to bed without reopening inquests to change verdicts and the possibility of the government having to pay out vast amounts of compensation. It's happened. Let's move, but let's not forget, says Texter 333. Here's Brian now. Hi, Brian.
Hi, just interesting. You know, I had the Mount Murray on my portfolio for a long time, particularly with regard to the fire. And that was almost like history repeating itself. The problem at Summerland was the Oroglass. Now, it was a combination of factors that set that building up so quickly, mainly due to the fact that the sun had been on it all day, a rare event in the Isle of Man, I know, but the overall temperature inside the dome was quite high, which put the Oroglass very close to its flash point.
Right.
Winding forward to Mount Murray, when we put the roof on and chose the materials for the roof, it all had to be approved by planners, and we were coerced to go for recycled roofing slates, and they looked very effective. Of course, we now know that these recycled roofing slates were made from car tyres, and they'd been sitting in the sun, warming up, and the temperature in the roof got up to very close to their flash point, and the roof burned like you wouldn't believe. Of course, the gentleman who set fire to it, unfortunately, by accident, served a prison sentence, which I think was unwarranted, but hey-ho. I don't make the laws. The fact is, the thing that really surprised me, when I looked into this and I spoke to the fire officer and the planners, did you know you don't have to comply with any regulations with regard to fire for roofing? You can put thatch on there, you can put bitumen on there, you can put wood on there. Combustibility of the top surfaces of the roof aren't covered at all by any fire regulations.
Even now?
Even now. Or at least when Mount Murray caught fire. Whether they've amended it, I don't think they have. People are still using fiberglass, and fiberglass burns like you wouldn't believe. So, you know, I don't know what the answer is, but that's an area that really should be looked at. I mean, Grenfell Tower, don't know what the cladding was, don't know anything about it, but it looked very, very similar to the fire that I witnessed. And I did witness the one all too close at Summerland because we were involved in the clearing of the building, and the company that I work for then were also funeral directors, so I was a little bit too close to it, to be honest. And Mount Murray scared me to death because I thought we were going to have deaths there. On that day, we were trying to do a head count. I didn't know at any time, and you know I was heavily involved in the construction of that complex. I had no idea that what we were putting on the top of that building, and think about it, the wooden trusses are covered with bitumen felt, wooden battens, and then effectively car tyres, and then left in the sun. Really had no idea that nobody had really addressed any possibilities of getting a fire like we had.
Okay.
And there were fire breaks in there. And one last thing, thank you very much to the gentleman that came on and said Brian doesn't look 70. I hope he doesn't look 72 either.
All right.
Thanks very much, Andy.
Cheers,
all the best.
Okay, thanks for calling today. Eddie's on now. Hi, Eddie.
Yes, good day, Andy. Just the Summerland business. I mean, myself and my wife, we were due to go that night, but for other reasons it got delayed and we decided to go somewhere else, thank goodness. But it all comes down to what I call the law of unexpected consequences. And this seems to be something which politicians seem to blatantly ignore all the time. I don't know if you were on the island during the 70s and 80s, but just outside of your window there's that fine breakwater. Now, I remember the building of that breakwater extension to Douglas Harbour. I think it was in the late 70s, early 80s. I'm not exactly sure, but Howard would probably know. And all of those stay bits, you know, the pieces that all interlock together on it, the three-legged, large, heavy concrete pieces, they were interspersed and placed to disperse the wave volume and pressure. And this came about, they put it there because when Manx Line came and put it there, the car ferry terminal inside the harbour, there was an easterly gale and it wrecked it one day, so they decided to put this new breakwater in. Now, it required hundreds and maybe thousands, I can't recall exactly, of these stay bits, three-legged concrete pieces.
Yeah.
But I seem to remember that in order to get the stay bits from where they were made, and I think they were made in Foxdale, and they were made there and they were taken to Douglas Harbour, and considerable work was necessary on the route for the upgrading, the strengthening and the restructuring of the corners, etc., to cope with the weight involved of the trucks and the transport of the stay bits, because the stay bits were very heavy and a difficult shape, and I think only 3 could be carried at a time on sort of long loaders. The route I seem to remember was via Braid and Cool and to the roundabout at the top of Douglas, where the business park is now, you know. But I remember it was quite scary meeting one of these trucks on the road, and we were recommended to avoid it if possible. But all the roadworks that were done had to be done before any transporting started. Now, fast forward to today, and our politicians' ignorance of the law of unexpected consequences say we'll have wind turbines in place by 2026. Coincidentally, the end of the current administration. Now, down on the south part, they say they want to put at least 4 in the hills, yet there is certainly not sufficient infrastructure in place, that is, roads, etc.
Well, they're talking, Eddie, about putting what they're calling a marine boon, which will be basically an extra dock in Castletown for the life of any wind farm, the 40-odd years. So Castletown will get an extension to the pier.
Oh, good grief. I haven't heard of that one, but how do they propose to ship the 800 tons of concrete required for each turbine tower?
Presumably by sea, and it will come in at Castletown.
But I don't mean what's happening, how to get it to the island. I mean how to get it from where it comes in on the island to where the turbines are going to be built.
Oh, crikey.
There are no roads. There are only tracks near the site that would cope with the weight of the shipment of such amounts of concrete. Then there's all the materials to build the towers. The turbine itself, that's a single unit weighing many, many tons. How do they get there? The roading will have to go in first, and it will have to be substantial and very expensive. It'll take a long time to put in.
Oh, don't tell the Department of Infrastructure, crikey.
Well, it's going to degrade the round table roads, which are used as access for heavy vehicles and materials, and the major expense after installation in reparation of the current roads.
And if the wind farm, if it doesn't go in the south, if it goes in the north, the wind farm's going to be up around the reservoir at Sulby, which is, they're going to have to put new roads in there.
Exactly. And that's something politicians seem to have totally ignored. And then, of course, there's the turbine blades. Now, the turbine blades are made in one piece. They're big, they're solid, and they don't bend round corners. You can check out the size of the blades in the trucks. Specialised ones are needed to move them, and they are really, really big. So how, our dear politicians, will they be transported from the harbour to the turbine sites along our small, twisting roads?
OK, all right, Eddie, we've got to dash on, but thanks for those points today.
OK.
Good to hear from you. Thanks for that. I just want to put something before you regarding a warning issued for potentially harmful illegal recreational drugs. Now, these are in the UK, and there's no evidence that they're on the Isle of Man to date. However, it's a group of potential synthetic opioids called nitazines. Nitazines have been identified previously in the UK, but their use has been more common in America, where they have run riot and caused untold problems. Their potency and toxicity are uncertain, but are similar to, and certainly more than fentanyl, which itself is 100 times that of morphine. You get the picture? Morphine, 100 times more is fentanyl. These things are more than that. Now, we're watching for them on the Isle of Man. Advice and treatment for drugs and alcohol dependencies, the drug and alcohol team. But just keeping a watch out for this. Certainly, I know the police, the constabulary, have got their eyes wide open for these nitazines and possible appearance on the Isle of Man. There is a national patient safety alert in the UK for this, and Public Health Isle of Man are giving a message of warning to people on the Isle of Man who use drugs, particularly heroin. These nitazines not good news.
Welcome to the Ramsey Park Hotel, where there's always a warm welcome and something to enjoy. Nestling beside Muirrook Lake with sea views towards Cumbria, the Ramsey Park Hotel is a stunning destination for your staycation. Take advantage of a fabulous 2-night stay with a glass of champagne on arrival, dinner for 2 nights accommodation and breakfast, all for just £290. For more news on food, offers and events, call 818-123 or visit the Ramsey Park Hotel on Facebook.
Have you ever thought about learning another language, trying out something artistic, or fancied giving guitar lessons a go? Maybe you're looking to develop new skills for your job or career, from creative arts and catering to agriculture and digital literacy. Whether you're looking for a course that's just for fun or want to upskill, University College Isle of Man offers a wide range of adult learning courses to help you meet your goals. Visit ucm.ac.im to find your next course.
You get more than you think, but all that you need when you
shop local with EVF.
Because your local EVF filling station isn't just a place for fuel, it's where you can get delicious food to go, chilled drinks, wines and beers, barbecue and summer essentials, from ice creams to surfboards, plus a great range of local products. Ellen Van In Fuels. Fill up, fuel up, and get all you need to go. Open till late.
Shop local with EVF.
The Royal Manx Show is back. Friday the 11th and Saturday the 12th of August. Don't miss a true Manx tradition with livestock stalls, local food producers and great entertainment. The Glebe Clydesdales, the Land Rover display team, Maglam competition and so much more. The Royal Manx Agricultural Show, Knockalo Farm Patrick. 2 days of right royal fun for all in association with Manx Telecom and supported by IFGL and your nation station, Manx Radio.
The Man in Line with Andy Wint.
Message in from Pat said, have you seen that thing outside the house in Ayrton Road in Crosby? It's got to be the worst one. Tommy's on now. Hi, Tommy.
Oh, hi, Andy. Summerland again, Andy. Sometime before the fire, I thought I'd take a little nosy round, and I went up the rear staircase all the way to the top, only to be met at the top by a push bar fire escape, chained at least 3 times round, Andy.
Yeah.
And I witnessed that. And, I mean, that's people should have gone to jail for it, you know, mate. I mean, it was. And also, my brother and his wife, they were over on holiday from London. And they were still taking money at the cash point as well before they were informed that the place was on fire. It was just, you know, the sloped entrance into the shop, right? And it was understandable that people didn't have any sort of communication in those days, and there wasn't any mobile phones or anything like that to inform them, and so the pay desk was facing away from Summerland, so they were still taking people gladly up there through there, Andy.
Yeah.
Tragic.
It was. Again, it's one of those things to think that it's 50 years ago and so many people have got memories, and at last people are allowed almost to share their memories, because for many years we kept quiet. People didn't talk about it.
Well, luckily, Andy, we counted all our visitors home at the Kenilworth. Thank goodness for that. You know, and there's quite a few hotels and visitor places. They'd have to deal with people who were dead in the fire, which is, you know, really tragic. Yeah.
Okay, all right, Tommy. Good to hear from you. I just want to get one thing in before we go, and it was a message in from Andy who said, "What's the outcome of the Freedom of Information releases regarding Dr. Ransom? What happened?" Well, Christian Jones has been looking at this. Almost all of the original information in the coronavirus presentation from the Isle of Man's former medical director was presented to the Council of Ministers, but the Department of Home Affairs has admitted its head civil servant used a poor choice of words in an email about how it would be presented. Here's Christian.
Today, the Department of Home Affairs published its delayed response to a Freedom of Information request submitted by Isle of Man TV journalist Paul Moulton. He's been seeking to establish how medical and clinical advice from Dr. Rosalind Ranson and others was handled by then Health Minister David Ashford and senior civil servants. Mr Moulton asked for confirmation of whether selective or toned-down versions of her information had been presented between the 13th and 24th of March 2020. In response, the DHA has released a timeline of correspondence between civil servants and the emails sent between the relevant parties. On the 13th of March that year, an internal presentation was made within DHSC by Dr Ranson to the Coronavirus Working Group, describing the impact the pandemic was likely to have on the health service. The chief executive of the DHA, Dan Davis, requested a copy of the presentation so that he could share it with the chief secretary, Will Greenhow, in order to brief the Council of Ministers. A small group of officers then worked on the presentation to Comyn, which the DHA said had to be presented in a compelling way for ministers to understand. The FOI response adds that it is aware of speculation about Mr Davis' use of the words toned down in relation to some of the doctor's slides in an email to his colleagues. In it, he adds the information should be kept at a high level so that Comyn didn't get into the weeds. The DHA says on reviewing the email in the context of other emails appears to show simply a poor choice of words. It adds that almost all the original information in Dr Ranson's presentation in terms of potential impact faced and the nature of mitigations which should be considered was included. The DHA says the meeting with Comyn resulted in the decision to introduce emergency powers and a range of unprecedented constraints on the public which were not envisaged by the Council even 2 weeks prior to that presentation.
More details at manxradio.com and our news page. Remember the lunchtime events for Summerland 50 at Loch Promenade Church today. There's the 1 minute silence at the Summerland site tonight at 7 o'clock, and the Beacon of Light is on at 10 tonight through till midnight. That's it from Andy. Thanks for dropping by. Tomorrow, Chris Thomas, former DOI Minister, former Policy and Reform Minister, on Man in Line tomorrow. Want to get a message into him? Answer phone or maninline@manxradio.com. And thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones today.
WINT